Captain James Teller stood by the command module's window aboard the Odyssey, staring into the vast expanse of space. The soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the monitors provided a comforting backdrop to the silence that enveloped the room. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," called Lieutenant Grace Kim, her voice slicing through the quiet. James turned away from the window and approached the navigation desk where Grace was stationed. "What have we got, Lieutenant?" James asked, peering over her shoulder at the data displayed on her screen. Grace pointed to a series of images and readings that had just come in. "We've entered a system with an uncharted planet, sir. Preliminary scans suggest it's Earth-like, breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and stable landmasses." James's eyes widened with interest. "Any signs of life?" "Yes, and it's more than just microbial," Grace replied. Excitement tinged her voice. "We're detecting organized agriculture, urban structures, and there seems to be some form of rudimentary road network. Intelligent life, then. Prepare for a closer orbit. I want visuals and more detailed scans," James ordered, his heart racing with the possibilities. As the Odyssey adjusted its trajectory, the crew gathered around the main monitor. The planet, which they designated Ziria, came into view, a swirl of blues, greens, and whites. It was beautiful and eerily reminiscent of Earth. "Get me a visual on those urban structures," James said. The screen flicked, and zoomed images of a medieval-like city came into focus. Stone walls, large wooden gates, and the faint outline of people moving through the streets were visible. "Looks like we've hit the jackpot, folks. An entire civilization living in what appears to be their version of the Middle Ages," James remarked, turning to his crew, their faces lit with curiosity and amazement. "Should we initiate first contact protocol, Captain?" asked Simon Hayes, the communications officer. James pondered for a moment. "No, not yet. Let's observe and gather as much information as we can. We need to approach this delicately. Grace, put together a small team for a recon mission. We'll go in disguised, try to blend in, and learn what we can firsthand." Grace nodded. "I'll get right on it, Captain." The preparations for the recon mission began immediately. James pulled up the protocol manual, scrolling through the digital pages filled with procedures on cultural engagement and safety measures. They would need to be careful not to disturb the natural development of the planet's inhabitants. Later, as they suited up in garments replicated to mimic the attire seen from the scans, James addressed his team. "Remember, we are observers, no interference. We gather information and we get out. Understood?" "Understood, Captain," the team chorused. With a final check of their translation devices, designed to interpret and translate the local language in real time, they were ready. The airlock door hissed open, and the team stepped onto the shuttle that would take them down to Ziria. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, James looked at his team, their faces a mix of nervousness and excitement. This was why they were here, out in the far reaches of space, to explore, to discover, and to understand the myriad forms of life the universe had to offer. "Ready for a little history lesson?" James asked, a grin spreading across his face. "Ready as we'll ever be," Grace replied, returning the smile. The shuttle touched down on the outskirts of a dense forest, the medieval city just visible beyond the tree line. James took a deep breath, the air fresh and crisp. "This is it," he said. "Let's go meet our neighbors." The dense foliage of Zifiria's forests rustled quietly as Captain James Teller and his team made their way towards the city. Clad in replicated medieval garb, they looked part of this world, yet felt distinctly apart. "Keep your eyes open and remember, minimal interaction," James whispered, leading his team through the underbrush until the city gates loomed ahead, an imposing structure of stone and wood. At the gate, 2 guards clad in iron helmets and wielding spears eyed them suspiciously. James nodded to Grace, who stepped forward, her translation device discreetly tucked under her cloak. "Hail, good sirs. We come from a distant land seeking trade and knowledge," Grace said, the device seamlessly translating her words into the local dialect. One guard squinted at them, unimpressed. "Distant land, eh? Never heard of a land where folks wear such fine cloth. What's the name of your kingdom?" James intervened. "We hail from Astoria, a kingdom beyond the great seas." He fabricated the details, hoping their unfamiliarity would be attributed to geographical distance. The guards whispered amongst themselves before one stepped back and motioned them forward. "Enter, but cause no trouble. Today's market day, and the streets are full." As they walked through the gates, the city unfolded with vibrant life. Stalls lined the streets, selling everything from pottery to fabrics. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. People milled about, bartering loudly. "This is incredible," muttered Simon under his breath, his eyes wide with fascination. "Focus, team. Observe everything, but remember, we're here to learn, not to intervene," James reminded them, though he too was captivated by the scene. They continued through the market, making their way towards the center of the city where the castle stood, an imposing fortress with high walls and towers. As they approached, a commotion at the square caught their attention. A group of local soldiers was dragging a man in chains through the crowd. The man was shouting, pleading for someone to listen. James turned to Grace. "What's he saying?" "He's accused of stealing bread. He says his family is starving," she translated, her face clouded with sympathy. James felt a pang of helplessness, but remembered their mission. They couldn't interfere in local justice, no matter how unjust it seemed by their standards. The team moved on, reaching the castle gates. Here, James requested an audience with the ruler, King Aldor, using the pretext of establishing trade relations. They were ushered into a grand hall, where King Aldor sat on a high throne, surrounded by advisors. The king was a stern-looking man with a thick beard and sharp eyes. "Visitors from Astoria, you say? We have not had outsiders in many generations," King Aldor remarked, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Yes, your majesty. We come seeking friendship and trade. We bring knowledge from afar and are eager to learn from your people as well," James replied, bowing slightly. King Aldor nodded thoughtfully. "We shall see what you have to offer. Tonight you will join us for a feast. There we will discuss your propositions." "Thank you, your majesty. We are honored," James said, feeling the weight of the king's gaze. As they were led to their quarters within the castle, Simon leaned over to James. "Captain, do you think it's wise to get so involved? We're here to observe." "We're walking a fine line, Simon, but establishing rapport is essential for any further interaction. We'll stay the course, gather information, and ensure our presence here benefits all parties, without direct interference in their ways," James reassured him. That evening, as they prepared for the feast, the weight of their mission settled on James's shoulders. Tonight, he would have to navigate not just a conversation, but the beginnings of an interstellar relationship built on respect, curiosity, and caution. The great hall of King Aldor's castle buzzed with the lively sounds of a feast. Torches flickered against the stone walls, casting dancing shadows over the faces of Zephyrian nobles who eyed the crew from Earth with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Captain James Teller, dressed in the regal attire provided by the castle's stewards, maneuvered through the throng with a practiced diplomacy. "This food is incredible," whispered Grace to James as they took their seats at the long wooden table laden with roasted meats, fresh fruits, and an assortment of breads. "Indeed," James replied, his gaze fixed on King Aldor at the head of the table. "But remember, we're not just here to enjoy their hospitality. Keep your ears open for any useful information." As the feast progressed, King Aldor raised his goblet, signaling for silence. "To our new friends from Astoria," he proclaimed, "may your visit strengthen the bonds between our lands." The hall erupted in a chorus of agreement, goblets raised high. After the toast, James seized the opportunity to engage the king in conversation. "Your Majesty, we are grateful for your hospitality. We've noticed the impressive organization of your city and the vibrant market. How do you maintain peace among your people?" King Aldor's expression hardened slightly. "It is not without challenges. We are constantly at odds with neighboring city-states, each claiming land and resources as their own. It is a delicate balance, maintained through strength and the will of our soldiers." James nodded, understanding the delicate nature of the political landscape. "Strength is important, but alliances through trade and knowledge can also be a powerful tool for peace," he suggested subtly, hinting at the potential benefits of their technological knowledge without revealing too much. The king considered this, his eyes sharp. "Perhaps, but not all are open to new ways. Tradition binds us." As the conversation unfolded, James learned more about the intricacies of Zephyrian politics and the ongoing power struggles that defined its history. It was a civilization proud of its heritage, yet stifled by constant conflict. Meanwhile, Simon mingled with the nobles, gathering snippets of information about their customs and concerns. He returned to James's side with a worried look. "Captain, there's talk of a planned raid on a neighboring state tomorrow at dawn. It seems they're not just defending but actively expanding their territories." James's concern deepened. This was the kind of situation he had hoped to avoid. Intervening could jeopardize their mission and the Prime Directive, yet doing nothing felt increasingly complicated given their knowledge of impending conflict. Thank you, Simon. Let's discuss this with the team back in our quarters. For now, maintain our cover. After the feast, the crew retired to their provided accommodations within the castle, a series of cold stone rooms furnished with simple wooden furniture. James convened a quick meeting. We have a predicament, he started, looking at each of his team members. There's an imminent attack planned. Our mission is to observe and learn, not interfere. However, the knowledge of this raid puts us in a moral bind. Grace frowned. If we help them avoid bloodshed, are we not then interfering in their natural development? And if we do nothing, are we complicit in the consequences of that raid? Simon added, clearly troubled. James rubbed his temples. It's a tough call, but for now we observe. If there's an opportunity to promote peace without direct intervention, we should take it, subtly. The team agreed reluctantly, understanding the gravity of their choices. They would need to navigate this carefully, maintaining the balance between observation and intervention. As James lay in his bed that night, the weight of leadership pressed upon him. The clash of Zephyrian culture with their own ideals of peace and progress was more challenging than he had anticipated, testing not just their diplomatic skills, but their moral boundaries as well. The following morning, Captain James Teller awoke to the urgent knocking on his door. It was Grace, her face etched with concern. "Captain, it's Simon. He's gone. His bed wasn't slept in." James's mind raced as he quickly dressed. "Gather the team in the main hall. We need to figure out what happened." In the dimly lit hall, the remaining crew members of the Odyssey assembled, their expressions grim. James addressed them. "Simon is missing. Last night he mentioned a raid planned by King Aldor's forces. I suspect he might have tried to intervene or gather more information. We need to find him, Captain. If he's caught outside the castle, especially during a raid, it could mean serious trouble," Grace pointed out, her voice tight with worry. James nodded. "We'll split into 2 teams. Grace, you and Mark head to the barracks. See if you can gather any intel on the raid or Simon's whereabouts. I'll take Sarah and head towards the last known location of the raid." Disguised in local garments, James and Sarah made their way towards the outskirts of the city where the raid was purportedly planned. The streets were quiet, the tension palpable, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Meanwhile, Grace and Mark approached the barracks. Using their compact translation devices, they spoke with a few off-duty soldiers. Mark's friendly demeanor helped lower their guards. "We heard there was a raid planned at dawn. Can you tell us more about it?" One soldier, his pride evident, boasted, "Yes, we struck at dawn, captured a few of those dogs from the neighboring city, even caught a strange one, dressed oddly, doesn't speak like any man I've heard." Grace's heart sank. "What happened to the prisoners?" "They're to be interrogated by the king's men. If they're spies, they won't see another sunrise." Back on the city's edge, James and Sarah surveyed the area. The signs of a skirmish were evident: trampled grass, discarded weapons, and a general disarray. Sarah pointed to a cluster of tracks leading back towards the city. "Looks like they brought prisoners back this way." They followed the tracks, leading them back towards the castle dungeons. James knew that attempting a rescue in broad daylight could escalate the situation. They needed to confirm Simon was there and plan carefully. Back at the castle, the teams reconvened. Grace reported her findings, confirming their fears. "Simon's been taken as a prisoner, mistaken for a spy." "We need a plan, Captain," Sarah said, her expression serious. James thought for a moment, then decided. "We'll request an audience with King Aldor. We'll say we wish to discuss the fate of the prisoners, advocating for mercy as a sign of goodwill." Grace nodded. "It's risky, Captain. Accusing them of wrongful imprisonment could backfire." "It's a delicate situation, but it's our best shot. Let's prepare our case." The team spent the afternoon gathering evidence and formulating their argument. By evening, they were granted an audience with King Aldor. In the throne room, James began diplomatically. "Your Majesty, we come before you to discuss a matter of justice. One of the prisoners taken today is a member of our delegation. We believe there has been a misunderstanding." King Aldor, intrigued, leaned forward. "And why should I believe this man is not a spy for my enemies?" James continued. "He is a scholar, not a soldier. His interest lies in learning, not in conflict. Releasing him would be a powerful demonstration of your wisdom and mercy, qualities that make a true king respected not only by his allies, but also by his adversaries." Aldor considered this, his gaze piercing. "I will think on your words. Until my decision, Your friend will remain where he is." As they left the throne room, James felt a mix of hope and frustration. They had made their case, but Simon's fate still hung in the balance. They needed to be ready for any decision the king made. A careful blend of diplomacy and readiness to act was crucial. The tense wait for King Aldor's decision was interrupted by the sudden sound of alarms. The clamor of ringing bells echoed through the castle, and shouts filled the air. Captain James Teller and his team rushed outside to see what was happening. "Captain, look!" Sarah pointed towards the horizon, where dark smoke rose in thick columns. "It's an attack!" James scanned the chaos. Soldiers hurriedly donned armor and grabbed weapons, and commanders shouted orders. He turned to his team, his voice firm over the din. "Stay close. We need to use this commotion to our advantage and find Simon." As they moved towards the dungeons, a royal guard approached them. "The king requests your presence immediately." In the throne room, King Aldor was donning his own armor, his face set with determination. "The city from the north has laid siege upon us, likely in retaliation for this morning's raid. I require every able hand to defend the castle." James saw an opportunity. "Your Majesty, allow us to assist in your defense. It could help prove our loyalty and perhaps persuade you regarding Simon's situation." King Aldor nodded. "Very well. Take command of the western wall. It's a critical point of defense." Armed only with non-lethal stun devices secretly stashed in their attire, James and his crew positioned themselves on the western wall. Below them, the attacking forces approached, their intentions clear as they began setting up ladders against the walls. James turned to his team. "Use minimum force. We're here to help, not to harm." As the battle raged, James's team effectively used their stun devices, incapacitating rather than injuring the attackers, causing confusion and slowing the assault. Below, the defenders cheered, mistaking the effects for powerful magic. In the midst of the battle, Grace tugged at James's sleeve. "Captain, this might be our chance. The guards at the dungeon will be distracted by the attack." James nodded, and together with Grace, he slipped away from the wall, making their way to the dungeon. The guards were indeed fewer, and with a quick use of their stun devices, they subdued the remaining guards and found Simon, bruised but alive, in a cell. "Captain, you came for me," Simon whispered as James unlocked the cell with keys taken from a guard. "We leave no one behind," James affirmed. They quickly retraced their steps, avoiding main pathways where fighting raged. Once they returned to the safety of the western wall, the siege began to wane. The attackers, demoralized by their mysterious losses and the fierce defense, started to retreat. After the last of the attackers had fled, King Aldor approached James, his expression a mix of gratitude and awe. "Your tactics were like none I have ever seen. You have saved many lives today." James took the opportunity to speak. "Your Majesty, as I said, we came in peace. Simon here is no spy. His release under these circumstances would strengthen the goodwill between us." King Aldor, looking from Simon to James, finally nodded. "Very well. He is free. But you must tell me more about these methods of yours." "With pleasure, Your Majesty. But let it be part of a broader conversation about peace. This siege, surely it must be the last. Let us help you forge a lasting peace." King Aldor agreed, signaling his advisors. "Prepare for a council of truce. We will discuss terms with our enemies and these friends." As they walked away, James put an arm around Simon, relieved. "Let's get you cleaned up, Simon. You've had quite a day." Simon managed a weary smile. "Thanks, Captain. I thought I'd seen my last sunrise." The crew's actions had not only saved their friend, but had opened a crucial dialogue. As night fell over the beleaguered city, there was hope that the dawn might bring a new beginning. The morning after the siege, Captain James Teller and his team gathered in the castle's main hall, now bustling with activity as King Aldor's advisors and various city-state representatives convened. A sense of urgency pervaded the room. Everyone seemed aware of the historic discussions about to take place. King Aldor beckoned James and his crew forward. "Captain Teller, in light of your bravery and the unique strategies you employed in our defense, we seek your counsel in our peace negotiations." James nodded, understanding the delicate nature of his involvement. "Your Majesty, while we are honored, we must tread carefully. Our primary goal is to facilitate dialogue and share ideas that promote lasting peace, without overstepping our bounds." Aldor agreed. "Indeed, your perspective as outsiders might provide fresh insights that we lack." As the council commenced, James introduced non-lethal defense strategies and advanced agricultural techniques as foundational offerings to promote cooperation among the city-states. These tools and methods can help ensure that no city-state feels the need to secure resources through conflict, he explained. Grace took the lead on demonstrating a simple irrigation system model that used minimal water to increase crop yields. Representatives from the various factions watched, intrigued by the potential to improve their agriculture without encroaching on neighboring territories. Meanwhile, Simon engaged with local scholars, discussing basic medical practices that could reduce the spread of disease, common after sieges and battles. His detailed explanations on hygiene and wound care were met with eager curiosity. Throughout these discussions, Sarah documented reactions and gathered feedback, ensuring that all contributions were noted for further development. It's about giving them the tools to solve their problems, not solving the problems for them, she reminded the team. King Aldor, witnessing the positive reception, proposed a trial period for these technologies and methods in his realm. If we find success, we shall host a summit to formalize these practices across all territories, he announced. As the meeting adjourned, a noble approached James. Sir, your methods could change the way we live. But how do we ensure that what you offer does not become another point of contention? What if one city-state uses these advantages against another? James recognized the validity of the concern. That's an important consideration. Part of our ongoing discussions must include checks and balances. Transparency in how technologies are used and shared can prevent misuse. The noble nodded thoughtfully, pleased with James's thoughtful approach. That evening, the team gathered on the castle's battlements, overlooking the city as the sun set. The mood was reflective. We're making a difference. But the real work has just begun, James mused. Building peace is like building a bridge. Both sides have to meet in the middle. Grace looked out over the city, where people slowly seemed to be returning to normal life. It seems we're helping them lay the first stones. Yes, James agreed, and we'll be here to guide them, as long as they need us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. As King Aldor's city implemented the new systems, reports of their effectiveness began to spread. Other city-states expressed interest, and a sense of cautious optimism grew. Perhaps, for the first time in generations, peace was within reach. James watched these developments closely, aware of the delicate balance they had helped foster. Each successful implementation of their suggestions strengthened the case for broader adoption, and slowly, the landscape of Ziria began to change. Not just the physical, but the political and cultural as well. As the team prepared for the upcoming summit, James felt a profound sense of accomplishment, but tempered it with caution. Success here could be a model for others. Let's make sure it's a model worth following. The sense of progress was palpable as Captain James Teller and his team prepared for the upcoming summit that would include leaders from all Zephyrian city-states. The mood in King Aldor's castle was cautiously optimistic, but James remained vigilant. Experience had taught him that progress could easily be derailed by those resistant to change. As the summit approached, whispers of dissent began to circulate. One evening, while James and his team were reviewing the deployment plans for the new agricultural systems, an urgent message arrived from one of King Aldor's advisors. Captain Teller, I fear there is a plot brewing among some of the nobles, the advisor confided, his voice low. They see the new technologies and the peace they bring as a threat to their power. They're planning to seize control of the castle during the summit, claiming that the king is too influenced by foreign ideas. James's brow furrowed. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll take steps to ensure the safety of the summit. Can you identify the leaders of this plot? The advisor nodded hesitantly. I can provide names, but you must be discreet. If they know I've spoken out, I'll be in grave danger. Assured of their discretion, the advisor slipped James a list of names and hurried away. James convened an immediate meeting with his team and King Aldor to discuss their course of action. Your Majesty, this betrayal could not only endanger your rule, but also the peace process we've all worked so hard on, James explained, handing over the list. King Aldor scanned the document, his expression darkening. I trust your judgment, Captain. What do you propose? We need to preempt their move, James suggested. Let's tighten security at the summit and quietly detain these individuals for questioning before they can act. We'll need to handle this delicately to avoid any unrest. King Aldor agreed, and the plan was set into motion. On the day of the summit, as leaders gathered, the castle was subtly fortified. James's team, along with the king's loyal guards, discreetly detained the conspirators without drawing attention to the unfolding drama. With the plotters in custody, the summit proceeded. James took the floor, addressing the assembly not just about the benefits of the new technologies, but also emphasizing the importance of unity and transparency. As we stand on the brink of a new era of prosperity and peace, let us not be swayed by fear of change, James spoke earnestly. The future we can build together is worth far more than the power any one leader or state might hold. The speech was met with applause, but James knew that the real work was just beginning. They had thwarted one crisis, but the path to lasting peace would be fraught with challenges. In the following days, the conspirators were tried before a council of their peers. Evidence of their intentions to disrupt the summit and seize power was presented, and they were found guilty. King Aldor, however, proposed a lenient sentence. "Let this be a lesson in mercy and the strength of our new path," he declared, sentencing them to house arrest and community service, helping to implement the very technologies they had opposed. This act of mercy was a powerful statement, reinforcing the principles of the new Ziria. It strengthened the resolve of the other leaders to commit to the path of peace and innovation. As the summit concluded with agreements signed and alliances forged, James and his team felt a mixture of relief and accomplishment. They had navigated a dangerous course, and though the journey was far from over, they had secured a hopeful future for Ziria. Back at the castle, as they debriefed, Grace reflected aloud, "It's strange, isn't it? How fear of losing power can drive people to such lengths." James nodded. "Yes, but it's also a testament to how much there is to gain. We've seen today that the will for peace can be stronger than the desire for power. We just need to keep nurturing that will." With the crisis averted and the summit a success, the team looked forward to their next steps in assisting Zifiria's transition. It was a rare moment of peace, both in their mission and in their hearts. The day after the summit concluded, Captain James Teller stood on the balcony of King Aldor's castle, overlooking the city of Ziria. The sun cast a golden glow over the rooftops, and the streets buzzed with the energy of a community on the brink of transformation. The agreements from the summit promised a shared future, a commitment to peace and mutual prosperity that had seemed unimaginable weeks before. James turned as Grace approached, her steps echoing softly on the stone. "It's hard to believe how much has changed in such a short time," she remarked, joining him at the railing. "It is," James agreed. "But our work here isn't done yet. We need to ensure these changes take root firmly enough to last." That morning, they met with King Aldor and his advisors to discuss the implementation phases for the new technologies and systems. They laid out plans for training programs, infrastructure projects, and educational workshops that would help embed the new technologies into Zifirian society. As the meetings went on, James received word that representatives from other city-states were arriving, eager to learn and perhaps replicate what they had seen during the summit. It was a hopeful sign that the cooperative spirit was taking hold. In the days that followed, James and his team were deeply involved in setting up the first of many training centers. They demonstrated the practical benefits of the agricultural and medical technologies introduced at the summit. One afternoon, while overseeing the installation of a new irrigation system in a farming community outside the capital, James was approached by a young Zifirian boy. "Is it true that these pipes can bring water to all our fields?" the boy asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Yes, it's true," James smiled, kneeling to be at eye level with the boy. "These systems help us use water more efficiently, so more crops can grow even if there's not a lot of rain." The boy's smile broadened. "That means we'll have more food for everyone." "Exactly. And more food means less conflict over resources, and more time for your community to build other things together," James explained. As the project progressed, news of its success spread, encouraging other communities to adopt the innovations. The initial resistance to change slowly transformed into enthusiastic participation. On the final day of their stay, King Aldor organized a celebration in the city's main square, where James and his crew were honored for their contributions. The king addressed the gathering, his voice carrying across the crowd. "With the help of our friends from beyond the stars, we have begun to lay down the weapons of war, to take up tools of peace and prosperity. Let this day mark the beginning of a new chapter in our history." After the speeches, as the square filled with music and laughter, James reflected on their journey. They had come to Ziria as observers and had become catalysts for change. Now it was up to the Zifirians to build on the foundations they had helped lay. As the celebration continued into the evening, James felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he found the young boy from the farm standing there, a small plant in his hand. "I wanted you to have this," the boy said, offering the plant to James. "So you'll remember us and how you've helped make things better." James accepted the gift, deeply moved. "Thank you. I'll treasure this always. And remember, keep asking questions and keep learning. You're the future of Ziria." With their mission complete, James and his team prepared to depart the following morning. They left behind a planet on the path to self-sufficiency and peace, taking with them memories of a people and a place that had grown close to their hearts. As the Odyssey lifted off from Ziria, James watched through the viewport as the planet receded into the distance, its cities tiny specks of light. They had left a mark on Ziria, but Ziria had left an indelible mark on them as well. It was an end, but also a beginning, an enduring hope that humanity could indeed be a force for good in the cosmos.